What if I told you that just speaking your mind, falling in love, or even going to the bathroom the wrong way could have gotten you punished or killed in the Roman Empire? Ancient Rome is often portrayed as glorious. Gold-plated statues, marble columns, heroic generals, and wise philosophers. But the truth? It was brutal, dirty, loud, dangerous, and if you tried to live there like a modern person, you'd be in serious trouble within hours. There are things you literally couldn't do, not without consequences. And the craziest part? You wouldn't even realize you were doing something wrong until it was too late. Let's start with something you probably do every single day. Speak your mind. Maybe you tweet something political. Maybe you argue with a friend about government. Maybe you make a dark joke online. In ancient Rome, even whispering a criticism about the emperor could get you executed. The emperors weren't just leaders. They were seen as divine. And insulting one of them? That was treason. Jokes about Caesar. Conspiracies whispered in back alleys. Poets writing satire about the Senate, all of them risked execution or exile. Even a slip of the tongue could be fatal. Think about that. You say something spicy after a bad day, someone overhears it, and the next morning, you're being dragged out of your house by Roman soldiers. No trial, no appeal, just a short walk to a very long, very sharp sword, and freedom of speech wasn't the only thing missing. Want to use the bathroom? Hope you enjoy public toilets. And I mean truly public. Imagine sitting shoulder to shoulder on a long stone bench with other people doing your business in the open. There's no privacy, no toilet paper. Instead, there's a single sponge attached to a stick dipped in vinegar water and reused by everyone. Every single person. Oh, and don't think you can just go back to your clean, cozy apartment afterward. Most Romans didn't have homes with private bathrooms. They didn't even have clean water half the time. Streets were filled with waste, both human and animal. There were no sewers in poor areas. People dumped chamber pots out of their windows, which means just walking around Rome was like playing a game of dodge the splash. Combine that with the heat, the bodies, the animals, and the lack of soap, and you start to realize the Roman Empire reeked. But let's say you're trying to make the best of it. Maybe you fall in love. Maybe you want to marry someone who makes you feel alive. That's cute, but it doesn't work that way. In Rome, love didn't matter. Marriages were business deals. They were arranged by your father, sometimes when you were still a child. Your feelings? Not part of the equation. If you fell in love with someone from a different class or worse, a slave or a foreigner, it wasn't just taboo. It was dangerous. It could ruin your family's reputation. If you were a woman, your opinion didn't matter at all. You were told who to marry, when to marry, and expected to obey. And if you broke the rules, there were consequences: public shaming, exile, or in extreme cases, execution. Love was a luxury most people didn't get. You didn't marry your soulmate, you married your father's choice. So maybe you just want to escape it all. Go home, close the door, relax. Well, you can't, because most Romans lived in overcrowded apartment blocks called insulae. These weren't stone mansions with balconies and fountains. They were tall, wooden death traps, crammed full of people. No insulation, no plumbing, no quiet. Your neighbor's baby cries all night. Drunks scream outside. Vendors shout from sunup to sundown. You hear everything, smell everything. And if a fire breaks out, and they often did, your whole building could collapse before you even make it to the door. People burned alive in those things all the time. Now imagine getting sick in this environment, or getting old. Today you go to the hospital, you get checkups, you retire. But in ancient Rome, no hospitals, no retirement, no support. If you were a soldier and survived 25 years of service, you might get a small plot of land. But for most people, old age meant poverty. If you couldn't work, you didn't eat. You were either taken in by your family or left to die in the street. And sickness? Don't even think about getting injured. Break a leg? That's the end of your career. Catch a disease? No antibiotics, no doctors unless you were rich. The poor turned to herbal remedies, magic spells, or sheer luck. And the hygiene? The same sponge stick we talked about earlier? It spread disease like wildfire. Dysentery, parasites, infections. They were part of daily life. There was even a belief that certain gods could punish you with illness if you angered them, so people prayed harder instead of washing their hands. And speaking of punishment, the justice system wasn't exactly fair. You've probably heard innocent until proven guilty. Not in Rome. If you were poor, enslaved, or foreign, your testimony barely counted. If you were accused of something and didn't have money or connections, you were basically guilty. Slaves could be tortured just to get a confession, even if they were witnesses, not suspects. And if you were found guilty, penalties were harsh: beatings, mutilation, crucifixion. Prisons weren't where you served time. They were where you waited to die. And remember, laws changed depending on the mood of the emperor. If you annoyed the wrong person, even a noble could find himself exiled, stripped of property, or assassinated without warning. But maybe the scariest part of all? No one talked about mental health. At all. If you were depressed, anxious, or traumatized, you were seen as weak or possessed. Roman soldiers came home from years of war, bloody battles, seeing friends die, committing horrors, and no one asked if they were okay. There was no therapy, no healing. You had to suck it up and move on. If you broke down, you were mocked, ignored, or punished. And some just disappeared. So let's recap. You couldn't say what you wanted. You couldn't love who you wanted. You couldn't be clean or alone or safe. You couldn't grow old peacefully. You couldn't have a bad day or get injured or admit you were struggling. Rome had power, culture, legacy, but it came at a cost, one you're not used to paying. Today you take for granted things like privacy, love, healthcare, safety, freedom of speech. You assume they've always been there, but go back 2,000 years, and those basic rights didn't exist. So the next time you imagine walking the streets of the Roman Empire, tunic flowing, sun setting over the Colosseum, just remember, you probably wouldn't last a single day. And trust me, you wouldn't want to.